Hi buddies! Welcome back to another D&D QuickBuild where I take a race from the PHB and make 3 builds that you can use. One that's basic, one that's intermediate, and one that's complex. The reasoning that I give for each one will be based on the cultural influences within the D&D books, but also the real life cultural influences upon the races and where they come from in mythology. I also want to make a note that I will be focusing mostly on the 2024 rules, but as needed you can adjust for the 2014 as you see fit. With all that out of the way, let's proceed with this episode, which is going to be focused on the humans. Alright, so if I'm going to be honest, this is probably going to be a fairly short video in comparison to the other ones. The thing about human characters is that they have a very similar lifespan to real-life humans. I wonder why. Their societies are pretty much whatever the players imagine them to be, however most campaigns tend to have a medieval, Renaissance, or feudal feel about them, but you can really use any culture that you can think of for this. The culture you base the humans off of can be literally any of the real-life cultures. The only limit is your understanding of history and literature and how it translates into D&D settings. So, how does that fare for our quick builds, and am I going to cover all the various types of humans and all the various cultures? No! No, I am not! Look, if I'm being real with all of you, there are too many ideas and too many cultures that humans can develop within the realms of D&D. So I decided to take a different approach for my own sanity. I decided that when making the human quick builds, I'm going to look at generic ideas and explain how they can fit into a variety of different cultures. I will also make sure to include the extra feat you get when you choose a human character when considering each build. With that all out of the way, let's get to the builds. For the basic build, I really hate saying this, but the most basic thing you can be as a human is to be a fighter. Fighters, of course, are trained in all sorts of melee martial arts and weapon combats, not to be confused with martial arts like in monks, but using weaponry, for that matter. Like humans, fighters actually come in a variety of flavors, and every single culture, every single concept needs someone who knows how to fight. Thus, a fighter is about as basic as you can get, and fits well with any human society. Loath I am to say it, the most basic thing for subclass you can choose to be is champion, because every culture ever has some form of athletics and their own unique fighting styles. As far as backgrounds go, the most basic you can be is a soldier, because every country and culture in history of ever has had some form of soldier. Plus, as a bonus, the soldier background gains the savage attacker to help max damage output. For your human feat, choose the tough feat so you have extra health, and voila, this is the most basic build, not just for humans, but just in D&D in general. Human Fighter is the most basic bitch version of D&D class building that it genuinely infuriates me, but it is the best one for a quick build, so here you go, here's your champion fighter, be happy! For the intermediate build, I have decided to go with Bard for a few reasons. The first is that even though Bard is a Western word, musicians, artists, poets are just as integral to human society as soldiers. And in my opinion, they are actually more important in the help of creating culture. Second is more of a mechanic-based reason, which if you have watched this series before, know that spellcasters are more complicated to play than martial characters. Bards, though, are interesting because they have the jack-of-all-trades effect. They can be more martially inclined, or they can be more spellcasting inclined, making them easier to make or more complex to make. It really just depends on how you wish to flavor your bard. As far as subclasses for the bard, honestly, it really doesn't matter because all the bard subclasses can fit pretty much any culture or any historical concept that you will want to think of. However, in addition to the bard class, I think for background I'd choose acolyte over entertainer. I know entertainer is normally what is paired with the bard, but I think acolyte will add something else that is important to human culture, and that is religion. The acolyte adds a religious element to this bard, making them more culturally inspired. Like you could have a Gregorian chanting monk, a Mongolian throat singing monk, sea shanties monk, a drum circle. Literally any traditional kind of music that you can think of. Is a bard is an acolyte, they're gonna have that inclination and feel that cultural depth, giving a more interesting and complex character. Plus, it comes with a magic initiative feat of cleric, giving you a few extra cantrips and spells early on. You'll want to pair it with the human feat choice of musician, and you'll be golden. Where mechanically it makes your human more squishy, roleplay-wise, your human bard acolyte will be incredibly versatile and can be made as simple or as complex as you like it, which is why I have it as the intermediate build. Now we have arrived at the complex build for humans, and to be honest, it's a little hard to do both mechanically and flavor-wise. Since humans in the D&D setting reflect every single human society in the real world, there is no cultural base like some of the other races have. So literally any culture you want to make your human makes sense. So because of this, I thought of an idea that is more mechanically diverse as opposed to being, roleplay diverse. So what I decided to do was having a sorcerer with a criminal background. Humans in D&D are not known to have magical origins. In fact, humans themselves don't tend to be magical at all, because, well, in real life, we're kind of not. This means that a sorcerer is already kind of an outlier. Think like Elphaba from Wicked, or any Muggleborn from Harry Potter. Any person who has inherent magic is kind of already an outsider. This reason I selected Criminal for 2 role-playing purposes and 1 mechanical purpose. The first roleplay purpose is that I find that the criminal background usually is associated with the concept of evil, and the worst my players have ever used is playing morally gray characters at worst, but they tend to play like chaotic good characters on average. As such, the criminal background usually having an evil vibe does not tend to get played with very often. Thus, I think roleplay-wise, it would make this character a little more interesting. Being a criminal and a sorcerer kind of makes you an outlier to whatever human society you are. This leads into the second roleplay reason to select Criminal, that being backstory intrigue. Why is your character known as a criminal? Like, what did you do? Were you actually at fault? Were you blamed for something? Were you set up? This leads to you having a lot of backstory to focus on, and you can bring it to the table to make a more complex character. This means that your character is not just your cut and dry creation like the human fighter. Instead, your character has to constantly be thinking about some of the things that they do and where they're going. Because if you go to the wrong place as a criminal, you're probably going to start trouble just by existing, which can lead to a lot of fun and a lot of really interesting roleplay scenarios. The mechanical reason to select Criminal is it gives you the alert feat, which is an amazing origin feat, especially for spellcasters to have. On top of that, the human feat I would select is Tough again, but this time to give yourself a little extra HP as a sorcerer. Altogether, being a criminal sorcerer basically not only makes you an outlier for human societies, but also gives you kind of an outcasty vibe, someone who has a reputation, someone who understands what it's like to be in the underworld of human society, but also, on top of that, gives you a lot of potential political roleplay options that I think would be amazing to have and be fun to play. Especially if you try to go like wild magic and thus, you're a criminal because you can't control your magic. That's actually kind of fun to think about. Altogether, there's a lot you can do with this, and it fits any human society possible. Because another thing that every human society has are criminals. And that wraps up D&D QuickBuilds for humans. I actually think that 2 of these are fantastic, and 1 of them belongs in the trash. I really, really do not like Champion Fighter. I have never liked it and never will. With that being said, what are some of your thoughts? What races do you want to see next? What other videos do you want to see next? Make sure to leave some in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.